At 6:05 p.m. on August 1st, 2007, during the evening rush hour, a four-lane bridge over the Mississippi River in Minneapolis suddenly gave way. Within seconds, more than 1,000 feet of concrete and steel plunged into the water and onto the riverbanks below. Cars, construction equipment, and dozens of people fell with it. What followed was a rescue effort unlike anything Minnesota had seen in decades, and an investigation that exposed a shocking flaw in the nation's aging infrastructure. This is the story of the I-35W bridge collapse. What happened, what went wrong, and how it changed how America views its bridges. The bridge in question was the I-35 West Mississippi River Bridge, a truss arch bridge completed in 1967. It carried Interstate 35 West, a major north-south route across the Mississippi River just east of downtown Minneapolis. Designed by Sverdrup and Parcell, the bridge spanned 1,907 feet and handled an average of 140,000 vehicles per day by the 2000s. Structurally, it was a steel-decked truss bridge with a central main span of over 450 feet. It had no redundant supports, meaning that if one key part failed, the whole structure could collapse. It was a workhorse of the Twin Cities traffic network, but by the early 2000s, it was showing signs of age. In fact, as early as 1990, inspectors rated the bridge structurally deficient. That didn't mean it was unsafe to use, but it did mean significant repairs were needed. Those repairs didn't come quickly. On August 1st, 2007, the bridge was partially closed for routine maintenance. About 100 tons of construction equipment and materials had been placed on the bridge's deck as part of a resurfacing project. Only a few lanes were open to traffic. At 6:05 p.m., as cars and trucks crept along in rush hour congestion, witnesses heard what sounded like loud cracking or thunder. Then the center span of the bridge gave way. Within 13 seconds, more than 1,000 feet of the bridge fell into the river, along with 111 vehicles. Some vehicles were pinned between the bridge and the water, others fell into the river and sank. A school bus with 63 children on board was among the vehicles that fell. Miraculously, the bus landed on a piece of the deck and avoided plunging into the water. Eyewitnesses quickly flooded 911 with calls. Firefighters, police, and rescue divers arrived within minutes. By nightfall, the scene was lit by emergency lights, helicopters hovered above, and volunteers were wading into the river trying to help. 13 people were killed. 145 more were injured, many of them seriously. The human toll of the collapse was devastating. Among those killed were Patrick Holmes, a 36-year-old security guard, Sherry Engebretson, a mother of two, and Sadia Sahal, a young pregnant woman from Somalia. Survivors described the fall as surreal, like a scene from a movie. Dozens were trapped in their vehicles, some submerged in water, others pinned under concrete. The school bus of children returning from a field trip was rescued by bystanders and emergency responders. No children were killed, but many were injured and all were traumatized. As Governor Tim Pawlenty said at the time, "This is a catastrophe of historic proportions for Minnesota." News of the collapse spread nationwide within minutes. Images of the fallen bridge, with its twisted steel and submerged cars, dominated TV screens and front pages. President George W. Bush addressed the nation the next day, calling the collapse a tragic reminder of how important it is to maintain our infrastructure. Federal officials and engineers were stunned, not just by the scale of the disaster, but by the fact that it happened to a bridge on a major interstate. The bridge had passed inspection as recently as 2006, yet within a year it had failed catastrophically. Public confidence in the safety of bridges, especially older ones, plummeted overnight. Within hours, the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, launched a full-scale investigation. A temporary no-fly zone was established over the scene, and the wreckage was carefully examined piece by piece. At first, there were many theories. Was it the weight of the construction materials? Was it corrosion? Was it sabotage? But within months, the focus narrowed. Investigators discovered that the bridge's gusset plates, steel plates that hold together beams and girders at the joints, had been undersized since the bridge was originally built in 1967. Specifically, the U-10 gusset plates were only 1/2 inch thick, when they should have been at least 1 inch thick. This design flaw went unnoticed for 40 years. NTSB Chairman Mark Rosenker summarized the findings in 2008. This collapse was the result of a design error, a serious one, and one that should have been caught decades ago. The final report stated that the original design plans failed to calculate the necessary thickness of critical gusset plates. The added weight from construction work on the day of the collapse stressed these already compromised joints to their limit. The collapse prompted a national conversation about infrastructure. In its aftermath, Congress approved $250 million for emergency bridge repairs and upgrades across the U.S. Minnesota itself acted quickly. The I-35 West Bridge was replaced with a new structure, the I-35 West St. Anthony Falls Bridge, completed in September 2008, just over a year after the collapse. This new bridge used redundant support systems, advanced sensors to monitor stress and corrosion, and was built with modern standards for earthquake and fatigue resistance. The federal government also directed states to reevaluate gusset plate designs on similar bridges. Thousands of inspections were conducted nationwide. The American Society of Civil Engineers, ASCE, issued a report card on U.S. infrastructure in 2009, giving the nation's bridges a grade of C. While that was actually an improvement from previous years, the message was clear. More investment and oversight were needed. While the federal investigation determined that the bridge collapsed due to a design flaw, no criminal charges were filed. The design firm, Sverdrup and Parcel, had merged into another company decades earlier, and the statute of limitations had long since expired, but civil lawsuits followed. In 2010, the engineering firm URS Corp., which had been hired to inspect the bridge before the collapse, agreed to pay over $52 million to survivors and victims' families. Another contractor, Progressive Contractors, Inc., paid $7.2 million. The state of Minnesota established a $38 million compensation fund for victims and their families, which was distributed after careful review. These settlements helped cover medical bills, long-term disability, and funeral costs, but for many, the emotional scars remain. The I-35 West collapse wasn't just a local tragedy, it was a wake-up call for the nation. Engineers and lawmakers began to view aging infrastructure not just as a budget issue, but as a matter of public safety. Minnesota, for its part, developed one of the most comprehensive bridge inspection and maintenance programs in the country, launching inspections on older truss bridges, particularly those with non-redundant designs. In 2013, a report by the Federal Highway Administration confirmed that more than 11% of U.S. bridges were still classified as structurally deficient. While the number has since declined, the warning signs remain. As Minneapolis Mayor R.T. Ryback said shortly after the collapse, "This wasn't an act of nature, this was a man-made failure, and we have to make sure it never happens again." In the years since, Minneapolis has honored the victims of the collapse with a permanent memorial near Gold Medal Park. 13 steel pillars, each representing a life lost, stand along the riverbank, etched with names and timelines. Survivors and first responders still gather each year on August 1st to remember the tragedy. The I-35 West Bridge collapse is now a case study in engineering courses, emergency response programs, and public policy debates. It reminds us that infrastructure is more than concrete and steel. It's a human issue. The collapse of the I-35 West Bridge was swift, catastrophic, and tragic, but it also sparked real change. Today, every bridge that gets inspected, every sensor that's installed, and every plate that's measured just a bit thicker, that's the legacy of those 13 lives. The question going forward isn't whether we remember what happened in 2007, it's whether we've done enough to make sure it never happens again.